Alright class, settle down, alright. So I didn't expect to see you all back here, but because so many of you didn't learn the lesson from the Kira Twig deck profile and you keep on putting out these trash Fabled decks, I gotta come back and show you what a real Fabled deck looks like. So today, we are back in the classroom for another semester of Fabled 201. And today we're not going to be roasting Kira Twig again, despite the fact he has another Fabled deck I'd like to tear into. We're not going to be reviewing the deck of some YouTuber. We're going to be reviewing a deck that was sent in to me by a subscriber, I assume. A nice individual called Dutch Knight on Dueling Books, so thank you for your deck. I'm going to give my thoughts and opinion, give some testing to back it up, and then give you an overall grade for the semester and see if you passed Fabled 201 this time. So without further ado, let's actually look at this man's deck. It seems to be a fairly standard Fabled deck. 23 monsters, 19 Fabled, and 4 non-Fabled, which is 4 non-Fabled is a good number to have. It gives you the chance of drawing them, but it doesn't make it so you see them every single opening hand, which is definitely not what you want. He's also running 17 spells, and blissfully, it's my favorite part of this deck profile, no trap cards. Oh my goodness, no trap cards whatsoever. So let's get on to the extra deck here. And so for the extra deck, again, we can see it's a triple Quasar deck. I mean, if you're running 3 Quasars, I assume your goal is to summon out as many Quasars as possible turn 1. So I believe that. You can see he's running the 1 Norden, fairly standard, you know, for the moment. Rest in peace, our Lord and Savior Norden. Whew, it's going to be tough losing him. Running the Tatsunoko, which is interesting over the 3rd formula, but I'll get more into that later on my overall thoughts of the deck. So just looking over the deck profile as it is, I'm going to give you guys a little sample of what I'm thinking before I go into testing. And just give you a few thoughts on the deck. So back in the monsters, my man Dutch Knight was playing 2 Ganashia, which I could do a whole 10-minute video just talking about how much I hate Ganashia in the deck. But it might work in testing, you know. Again, I'm going to tell you this 100 times. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work in theory. If it works in testing, that's all that matters. 2-Eater, I find that interesting. You're giving up the draw power that Tuning Bear gives you to more consistently get that level eater in the graveyard, which is very good. Run a lot of discard outlets, and I've never been a big fan of Tatsunoko. But again, as I always say, twice this little part here. It doesn't matter if I don't like the card. If the card works in the deck, that's all that matters. So what's gonna happen now is I'm gonna do 10 test games with the deck, and since this is a triple Quasar deck, what I'm gonna do is test it to see how many Quasars it gets. So just do 10 test hands, record how many Quasars it has, and then present that to you in a pie chart form. And I'll use that to base if the deck worked better than mine, worse than mine, and if the deck worked as a cohesive whole. I'm back from testing. See, that didn't take too long. Anyways, so I'm just doing 10 tests for brevity's sake. Obviously, it's not the biggest sample size in the world, but it does give me a general idea of how the deck plays. It gives me a general idea of what the consistency looks like, and we can extrapolate the trends from that. So as we can see, as you'd expect from a Quasar deck, it's about a 50-50 coin toss as to whether you'll get a Quasar. We got no Quasars whatsoever in 5 of the games we did. In 2 of the games we got 1 Quasar. 2 of the games we got 2 Quasars, and I will say, one of the games it could have been a triple, but we just couldn't draw into Soul Charge. I know, it's tragic, but again, Troll Charge, doesn't matter what deck you're running, Soul Charge is always going to be in the bottom 10 cards of your deck. That's just a fact of life. And we were able to get 1 triple Quasar. So this data looks a lot like the data I pulled in the Rescue Cat video using the deck I showed in the deck profile for the April 2017 format. So it's a very, very similar performing deck. We were able to pull 26% triple Quasar rate, 12% 2 Quasars, and 8% 1 Quasar. The main difference just being that I had more trials, so I say it happens all the time. Being trolled by Soul Charge is actually a pretty rare thing. So the more trials you do, the more I expect these numbers to kind of line up with that. But I'm going to go into my experience with the testing and some cards I disagree with and some changes I'd make to the deck to get this looking more like that 26, 12, and 8 split that we saw with the perfect Fabled deck, otherwise known as my Fabled deck. So let's get right into that. So this is crunch time. We're in the final exam of Fabled 201, and let's see how my man Dutch Knight did with his monsters. So I deducted 2 points. I deducted 1 point because I fucking hate Ganashia. I really hate drawing 2 Ganashia, which is, I don't want that even being a possibility in my deck. I want Ganashia out of my hand as much as possible. I really only think Ganashia has merit in this deck as a Rescue Cat target nowadays, or as a Dark World Dealings target to make Grimro live, and either of those situations, he can do his job at 1. Running him at 2, I can see an argument being, oh, if you run Ganashia at 2, you can draw Rescue. If you draw Ganashia and Rescue Cat, what are you going to do? You have no plays. That's why you run him at 2. It's the old 2 Garnet argument for the Brilliant Fusion engine. Well, there's actually a replay I want to show you guys, and I'll throw it up now, where I did the unimaginable. I opened up with a Ganashia and a Rescue Cat, and guess what? You still have tons of plays. So I'm going to let that roll now. Just show you the start of the combo to show you it's not a complete brick. So as we can see here, the unthinkable happens. I open up Cat and Gana, so I just use Cat, get Cerberel, Ganashia, and of course, depending on your hand, you can do different plays, but as long as you have a discard outlet, you should be able to make some type of play out of this hand, because Cat is just that good. And you can see after like 10 seconds, we're already at the point where we have Reagan, and we have Librarian, and we just resume with our play as usual. This ended up being a double Quasar. This was the one where we got trolled by a Soul Charge, so as you can see, it's not the end of the world. If you get a Gana and a Cat in your hand, just Cat's good enough, you can still do plays with it. And aside from the whole, oh, if you draw Gana and Cat argument, I'm not seeing a reason to run 2 Gana. It's just redundant. It doesn't need to be done. Gana's just not good enough to warrant running at 2. Speaking of redundant, I found 2 Lurid, 2 Eater to be a little bit redundant. Again, I can see the argument behind 2 Eater being you want to see it in your hand more than you'd like to see a Tuning Wear, just because it enables the Coral Dragon play. It's always just a free level you can bring back. You just keep on eating. You can just keep on eating Quasar down. You can keep on eating. You know, your high level Reagans and your 6s down. So it's good to have. But the thing is, if you have 2 Level Eater and 2 Lurie, the thing I found in testing is I kept on debating what I wanted to use my discard outlets on. You know. So it really just did function as a second Lurie, where I was like, okay, I need to get this out of my hand with like a Reincarnation or something like that. And I just found that I didn't have enough discard outlets to go around to get rid of the Eaters in my hand, the Luries in my hand, and as well as trigger, you know, the shit like the Cerberels and get Kashan out of my hand and stuff like that. So what I would do is I would either take out a Lurie or take out an Eater, either way. And I took off a half point just because I really did miss Tuning Wear in testing, but I'm not gonna say the deck needs Tuning Wear. It's just like I came into several situations where like I opened up, you know, Glow Up Bulb 1-for-1. I'm like, I could have 2 draws here. I opened up like Kashano, a dead monster, and 1-for-1. I'm like, So I would have loved to have 1-for-1. I would have loved to have Tuning Wear as a 1-for-1 target, but the deck didn't really need it. Again, as you saw from the testing, the results were. They were pretty similar to what I was getting even with the Tuning Wear, so either or doesn't matter. I'm not going to take up a full point for it. We got through the monsters relatively okay, so let's move on to part 2 of the final exam for Fabled 201 Semester 2, the spell cards. So, full disclosure, I started making this video before the ban list dropped, so of course right now, 2 Instant Fusion is the wrong ratio to run. You better run 0 Instant Fusion, unless you're out here trying to run rare fish. But, yeah. So in theory, I get the idea behind 2 Instant Fusions. You know, Norton is such a good card that you really do need to see it. But the issue I ran into is that 2 Instant Fusions either bricked my hand early game or just bricked my hand end game. Because you don't want to see Norton too early in the game. You know, you don't want to see like Instant Fusion turn 1, because the fuck is in your graveyard? Nothing. And you also don't want like 2 Instant Fusions in your hand when you're like really late combo and your field's looking like, you know, Quasar, Formula, Hyper Librarian, because then, you know, I mean, that's a bad example, and your field's looking like Quasar, Librarian, Charge Warrior, and like a level 1 tuner, because then you're like, oh, this is fucking, I don't want to bring Norton out, I don't have any field space. So, that's kind of my thought process behind that. I took out a full point for it. I would much rather see something like a 3rd Incarnation, or what I feel like the deck really needed was a Magical Stone Excavation. I've really come around on Excavation. I love the card. Just because you get the points in your combo where you have 40 million cards in your hand because Librarian's giving you so many pluses. But I mean, you don't have any draw power left because it's all in your graveyard, so Excavation really helps in that situation. Excavation, again, has the issue of being dead early game, but if you run 1 Instant Fusion, 1 Excavation, you have a higher chance of being able to draw that card later in the turn than just running 2 Instant Fusion, which, is going to break your hand significantly more than if you're running 1. That's my thoughts on the spells, and now let's move on to the extra deck. So I have a minor complaint that I would like to see a Blazar in there somewhere, just because Blazar, it has a lot of utility this format, because what it does that Quasar doesn't is it dodges Dryden. So if your opponent uses, if your opponent's going first and they use an effect while they have a Dryden up, you can negate it with Blazar, and because Blazar's off the field, they can't chain link to chain Dryden to pop your card, which they can do with Quasar. And Dryden also stops Pendulum Summons, which is nice, but that's fine, doesn't matter, you don't need it, it's just extraneous. But there is only one card I want to talk about, and that one card is Tatsunoko. Yeah, I had a feeling I wasn't going to like Tatsunoko just looking at this guy's deck profile, and testing backed me up completely. So, here's my little rant on Tatsunoko. I don't like the card at all, but I get why people want to play it. They see Fabled, they see, oh, this archetype wants a low hand count, and it synchro summons. What if I could synchro from hand? And it's a good thought process. The only thing is, the only synchro monsters that Fableds ever want to make are Reagan and Quasar. And Tatsunoko is terrible at making Reagan. And it's even worse at making Quasar. So, you may be like, okay, well, hold up. Tatsunoko's really good as, pseudo discard fodder. You can get dead Ganashias out of your hand. You can get dead Level Eaters out of your hand and bring out Formula Synchron. And bring out an Armory Arm. I'm like, well, I don't like that play, because if you're getting dead Ganashias out of your hand, first off, you have dead Ganashias in your hand, which means you're playing more than one Ganashia, which we already covered. That's a mistake. But if you're also getting dead Ganashias out of your hand, you're making Stardust Charge Warrior, and you're not doing the Coral Dragon play. That's mind-boggling to me. There's absolutely no reason you would ever want to do that. But you could also make Coral Dragon using Tatsunoko and Ganashia. But again, I would much rather save that Ganashia for discard fodder and just run another Formula Synchron in the extra deck. There's nothing Tatsunoko really does that Formula Synchron really can't do better. Tatsunoko, it's a really awkward level. The only way you can really make it is, I guess if you get a Cerebro in the field with a Level Eater, or if you use Chawa and Nizuchi. But if you're using Chawa and Nizuchi, there are plays there you can use to go into Colossalus and then into Reagan. I never made Tatsunoko in the 10 games I was playing. I'm sure if you played 100 games, Tatsunoko would save your ass 3 times, but I just didn't find it was more useful than a single Formula Synchron testing, so I'm taking off 3 points. 1 because fuck Tatsunoko, 2 because fuck Tatsunoko, and 1 because it's not Formula Synchron. I really don't like this card. So let's get into the final score, and let's see if my man Dutch Knight passed Fabled 201. And for this man's final exam grade, there were 45 points total. If every card in this deck had worked exactly as he intended it to, and it all came together, it got triple Quasar every single time, I'd give that man 45 points. However, because of the Ganashias and a few of the cards in there, I took off 2.5 from his monsters, took off 2 from spells because I didn't like the fact he was running 2 instant fusions, and I didn't like the fact there was no reincarnation. Magical Stone Excavation, and took off 3 from the extra deck because, in summary, fuck Tatsunoko, for a total of 38.5 points out of 45, which is an 85. Congrats. You passed, Dutch Knight. You have shown the world what a good Fabled deck can look like. But yeah, if you guys see any whack Fabled decks online, you want to get them rated, send them to me before this deck dies when Link format comes out. So, I'll see you all soon. I hope you all have a wonderful day.